Hi, Ashley here with HeartHookHome.com, and today we are learning how to crochet the Tunisian Smock Stitch. I absolutely love this stitch. It's beautiful texture. This is actually worked in the round, so with a double-ended Tunisian crochet hook. I do have a tutorial for double-ended or Tunisian worked in the round as well. The basic gist for the smock stitch is the same as what we are going to learn in this video today, worked flat. Now, this is I'm calling this my smock set. It's got fur at the top, fur at the bottom, right? Super cute little cowl. And then also that comes with that is a beanie and a pair of mittens. So these are available on hearthookhome.com, or they will be soon if they're not already. So let's learn how to crochet this Tunisian smock stitch together. The first thing that you're almost always going to do with Tunisian crochet is you're going to start with a foundation row that is Tunisian simple stitches, which I have already completed here. I did a chain of 20, which is the same chain that I did on the written tutorial on the Heart Hook Home blog. A couple things to remember when you're making the Tunisian smock stitch is that your first stitch over here, it's either going to be a single Tunisian simple stitch or it's going to be a Tunisian simple stitch 2 together. So we're repeating 2 different rows. So there's going to be one row where we start with the Tunisian decrease, and then the next row we're going to offset that so that we have that beautiful little diamond shape. So first off, we are going to start with a Tunisian simple stitch 2 together. So I'm going to insert my hook under both of these 2 vertical bars. We're going to skip the very first one. We never use this very first one here. We're always going to use these first 2 vertical bars. I'm going to pull up a loop. That's my first stitch, or technically my second stitch of the row. So I've got 2 loops. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to yarn under, which means that I'm going to pull my hook to the back, and I'm going to kind of pinch it with my index finger here. I'm going to go under the next 2 vertical bars, and keep holding on with your index finger here. You do not want to let that go, otherwise you'll be making a purl stitch, not what we are intending to make. So as I'm holding this here, I'm going to go ahead and pull up that loop. So now what I've technically done is I've created an increase because I've done the yarn under here. And then I've done a decrease here because I went under 2 stitches. So the stitch count should always remain the same, but we are adding one here and removing one here. So now that's all we're going to do for the rest of the row. We're going to pull our hook to the back, hold it with our finger, go under the next 2 vertical bars, and pull up a loop. Bring it to the back, go under the next 2, pull up a loop. Bring it to the back, next 2, and pull up a loop. Back, 2, pull up a loop. Back, hold it, 2, pull up a loop. Back, 2, pull up a loop. Let's pull my yarn here. Okay, we've only got these 2 left, so I'm going to pull it to the back, go under these 2, and now what we're going to do, even though we are on the end, right, you always need to remember that your very first one is either going to be a Tunisian simple stitch 2 together or just one single Tunisian simple stitch. Do not do the yarn under on the very first one that you do. It doesn't matter what row it is, do not do the first yarn under, okay? You only do it on the subsequent ones here, and you can tell which ones those are because they kind of sit it at a diagonal, right? Now, when you get to the end, you do always want to do a yarn under before you get to the end here. Depending on what row that is, it might be what we're about to do, or it might be on this one here. So just pay attention and always remember that you don't do that on the first one and you do it towards the end. So at the very end here, I'm going to pull that yarn to the front, or pull my hook to the back. I'm going to go under both sides of that outside stitch and pull up a loop. And now here's an important trick as well. If I started with 20 crocheted chains, I should always, unless I'm intentionally increasing or decreasing, I should always have 20 loops on my hook at the end of every single row. So if you don't have 20, or whatever number you started with, you know that something got off somewhere. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Beautiful. So now I'm ready for my backward pass. And the backward pass that we do is like we do with all other Tunisian crochet. or most. So we're going to do a chain 1 first, and then we are going to yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 until we get to the end of the row. Sometimes you'll notice, and maybe it'll happen here, sometimes you'll notice that your yarn over or your yarn under from your forward pass might get a little caught on the loop that you pulled up. I'm almost positive that's going to happen at some point during this video because it just does. But you'll want to make sure that you are only getting that first loop there. So yarn over, pull through 2, all the way until you only have that 1 loop remaining. And there we go. That is the first row of our 2-row repeat. So this is one of the rows that you're going to do over and over and over again. So you are going to offset that row with the following row, with this row right here. We are going to start by making 1 single Tunisian simple stitch, that's a tongue twister, in the first stitch here. So you're always going to skip the very outside loop, and we're going to go into that first vertical bar right here. I am going to pull up a loop, and that is just a regular Tunisian simple stitch. And all that we're doing for that is to get us over 1 so that we can make the diamond effect that we're going to pull up this loop, and you'll see the effect start to take place here in a moment. So remember, the very first Tunisian simple stitch 2 together that you do of each row, it doesn't matter if it's this row or the previous row, doesn't matter. You're not going to yarn under for that one. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to find those next 2 vertical bars, and sometimes this one here, this is the yarn under from the previous row. Sometimes that can get kind of hidden in there. So you're going to want to find that one that's coming out of the left of this little peak that we have from the previous row, and then the next one here. So you're going to use these 2 here, and you're going to pull up a loop. And remember, we did not do a yarn under for that first one. Now we are going to do a yarn under, so bring your hook to the back. We're going to hold it with our index finger, and we're going to find the next loop, which is this one. Remember I said it's kind of hard to see, it kind of gets buried in there. There's that one and that one, and we're going to continue holding it with our index finger and pull up that loop. Bring it to the back, find that next buried loop and the next loop, pull up a loop. Hook to the back, next 2 loops, pull it up. And while we are adding this loop here with the yarn under, we are decreasing here. So that will always offset each other as far as the stitch count is concerned. So we're just going to continue pulling up all of these little decrease, increase loops to the end of the row. To the back. Now, when only 1 loop is remaining, we have just this one right here, which is our yarn over from the previous row. We are going to yarn under. Remember, we always do a yarn under at the end of the row, whether it's over here at the very end or on this row where we do it in this last loop here. Yarn under, hold it with your index finger, pull up 1 single Tunisian simple stitch right there. Now we're going to pull up a regular loop at the outside stitch here and pull up that loop. Now, we should have 20 loops on our hook. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So we've got our 20. You can see that these got these beautiful, cute little pairs, right? They like to hang out together. So again, we have our regular, same old Tunisian backward pass. Chain 1 and then yarn over, pull through 2 all the way to the end of the row. Let me pull my yarn a little situated here. And now we are going to do the first row again. So, you know the first row that we did? We're just going to do that. So we alternate the first row with the second row, and the first row and the second row, and the first row and the second row. So let's do that each row one more time, and then I'll show you how I like to fasten off or to bind off with the Tunisian Smock Stitch. So for the next row, we're doing the same thing that we did down here. And remember that the first one that you do not do a yarn under. No matter what row it is, you do not do a yarn under. So we're going to find those first two vertical bars, not the very one on the outside, but the first two here. And we're going to pull up a Tunisian simple stitch decrease right here. Boom. Looks great. Now we're going to find the next two vertical bars. See how they're kind of pointing in towards each other? Pull that yarn to the front, insert under both of those, and pull up that loop. Yarn under, this one that's kind of hard to see, and then the next one, pull up that loop. And we are just going to continue this all the way to the end. And you have to make sure that you are holding that loop from going anywhere. When you get to the end, this is the row where you do the yarn under and you go in the outside of the stitch. Right there. Pull up that loop. Let's make sure that we still have 20. It's very important, especially while you're learning this stitch, it's very important to make sure that you have your 20. Beautiful. So we're going to do our backward pass as normal. Now we're going to do, when I get down to where I only have one loop left, now we're going to do that other row again. So we're going to make sure that we're offsetting. And if you just remember it as offsetting, it's a lot easier to wrap your head around what exactly we're doing. This stitch did take me a while to fully understand, and it really helped once I realized that we never ever do the yarn under at the beginning. Never increase at the beginning, always increase at the end. It doesn't matter what row you're on. So this is the second row of the 2-row repeat that we're about to start here. So in order to move over to offset, we need to do one Tunisian simple stitch in this first vertical bar, just like that. Now we're going to do a Tunisian simple stitch 2 together without the yarn under. So I'm going to find this loop here and the next loop there. And now I'm going to do my yarn under, go in these two. Yarn under, go in these two. And like I said, this one, the slanted one, can kind of get a little hard to find. See how it's kind of hiding in here? It's right there. And so when we're doing the Tunisian smock set pattern that I showed you at the beginning of this video, when you're doing that, literally all you're doing is this part. You're only doing the yarn under and inserting under 2 for that whole entire pattern, because there are no end stitches there. Since it's worked in continuous rounds, that's what's beautiful about that pattern, is that it just goes, fast, 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 spiral, spiral, spiral. So we're going to continue. When we have only this one single little loop here, this one right here, we're going to yarn under. Remember, we always yarn under, either it's this one or the outside one like the last row. Pull up that loop, and then pull up a stitch, pull up a loop in the outside stitch here. Let's make sure we have 20. I know it's monotonous and tedious, but it's needed. 20, perfect. So now let's go ahead and do our chain 1. We yarn over and pull through 2 all the way to the end, and then I'll show you how I like to bind off or fasten off of this stitch. Okay, when we are going to fasten off for Tunisian crochet, we are almost always going to do a slip stitch. Well, we will always do a slip stitch to the end of this row here. Now, if you just do a slip stitch under each of these vertical bars, you're going to have these huge gaping holes where you would have cinched them up had you continued simply crocheting, right? So what I like to do to kind of keep those from being huge gaping holes is I'll go into the vertical bar here, and then I'll also go into the corresponding front bar of the chain that I made on my backward pass. So we're going to go into there and slip stitch. Now I'm going to find the next vertical bar, which is this one here, and I'm going to find the horizontal bar that corresponds to that on the back, right? And just slip stitch to that. Go into the next vertical and then the horizontal, slip stitch. The next vertical, horizontal, slip stitch. And so if you look at the chain, basically they're chains that you made in between each of these when you were making your backward pass, you're only pulling up the loop. Let's see, let's pull up this vertical loop. You're only pulling up the loop in what would be only one side of that chain, just this. Because you don't want to make it so bulky that, you know, it's obvious that you did something different here. But if you go into the horizontal bar and then the vertical bar and then the horizontal bar, I know my directions, I promise. It just really helps to cinch up those holes that were created. And we're just going underneath both of those. Slip stitching all the way until you get to the end. And then what I typically like to do with my Tunisian crochet, it doesn't matter what I'm making, I typically like to get all the way to the end here, which we're about to do, and then I will either use the same hook that I'm using now, or I'll switch to my regular crochet hooks. Let me see, we're almost there. So I got to the end. I'm going to go into the end here, this outside of that last row, and boom, there we go. So I've gone all the way across, and you can see that those big gaping holes are no longer big and gaping holes, right? So personally, what I would do next, if I were to trying to finish off a project, I would do switch my regular crochet hook, and I would just do a single crochet border around the whole thing. It helps to clean up any inconsistencies with your stitching, and that's it. That is all there is to the Tunisian Smock Stitch. I absolutely love this stitch. Stay tuned because that cowl set is going to be posted very soon on hearthookhome.com as a free pattern. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to crocheting more with you soon.